Good afternoon. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us at the Billie Holiday Project for Liberation Arts this afternoon for our inaugural Donald Bentley Memorial Lecture. My name is Lawrence Jackson. I'm Bloomberg Distinguished Professor of English and History at Johns Hopkins, and I have the great honor of welcoming our guest this afternoon, D. Watkins, a Baltimore native, a living legend, and a very important national writer on all kinds of events, but especially urban life. It's fitting that Dee is joining us for this lecture that's beginning our efforts at properly memorializing a Black man, a young Black man, a young Black intellectual who died in this city in 1989, my very close friend, Donald Bentley. And I just wanted to share with you a little bit about the Holiday Project and this journey and what we hope to accomplish in the city. Donald and I grew up together. We had shared a lot of the same friends, both ambitious young men, as were the people in our social group, the Oxfords. And you know, we have pictures of the Oxfords from the 1980s and the places where we used to hang out, especially at Signals and Fantasy. And you know, we would always try to take a picture. And you can see Donald in the center of the black and white photo on the right. He's in the back of the picture on the left. I had just gone over as a Kappa and was always, you know, making the Kappa sign, throwing the yo, as we are known to do. Donald was killed by robbers in the summer of 1989 when he was going into his sophomore year at Morehouse College. Many of the young men from my neighborhood, or certainly, you know, more than a few, had decided to go to Morehouse. There was a very strong feeling that there were some things that we couldn't get from historically white institutions. Donald had graduated from the Gilman School, but had decided that there was a component of his education that was missing. And it was a deep tragedy for all of the people who were in this picture the night of his wake, the day before his funeral. And D. Watkins and I were just sort of talking, and the tragedy of so many Black people in the city. I mean, this happens to be a picture that's all male, but I can count the number of people who are not living today, who are in this photograph. And some of them lost their lives because of street violence. Some of them lost their lives because of drug addiction or drug overdose. Some of them lost their lives because they received or were entitled to such poor health care. I have been at the funeral of so many 50-year-old men over the last couple of years. But nonetheless, I would say that it was the recognition of the loss of life of Donald Bentley that really encouraged me to work to develop as a writer and as a teacher. And I started to do this really when I returned to Baltimore after I finished my doctorate degree. I wrote for the Sun paper, and I was interested in, sort of recording and also trying to stir the consciousness of the city about the particular problem, the acute problem of violence in Baltimore, which had been ongoing from the time I was in junior high school. Somebody that I went to junior high school with, Craig Cromwell, was shot and killed in 1985. Craig and I were the guys from Mount Royal, number 66, who had both gotten scholarships to go to Catholic school. We have a real crisis in Baltimore, but it's one that has been ongoing for multiple decades. And as I said, I really have tried to do what I could with pen and paper, writing what are essentially elegies, because the loss of life is so acute. And it has fueled a great deal of my work. Some of the essays are devoted or dedicated to Donald, and they talk about our lives and also, I would say, the richness and promise that is in Baltimore. One of the things I'm so excited about being with Dee today, Dee Watkins, is that he's somebody who knows the pain of the city, but also the potential of the city, really the untapped potential. And so I always, even when I lived and worked in Atlanta, Georgia, had been sort of trying to think about what was going on in the city. And I returned in 2016 to take this job at Johns Hopkins, where I created something called the Billie Holiday Project for Liberation Arts. With the Billie Holiday Project, we're really trying to do, basically two things. One of them is we want to recover the archives. We want to preserve and to be proper custodians of the rich local archives, the historical record that Black people have established over multiple centuries in the city. And it's always at risk of, sort of being tossed out into the garbage. Um, we have a person like myself has really worked to develop the lives of figures like Billie Holiday and Frederick Douglass, and have developed new technologies in digital maps so that we can share the scholarship that we are recovering with larger audiences. My work in the history field really has worked to talk about Frederick Douglass as a Baltimorean. If you read contemporary work on Frederick Douglass, I mean, people just skip over his life here in the city. And in fact, Douglass was the product of an incredible free Black community that was highly literate, engaged in national and international affairs. We've conducted symposium. We're working with as many of the local institutions as we can, find and partner with. We want it to be a joint community effort going forward to make sure that we have a detailed and archivally rich Black historical record. We've been able to bring out a book called City People, or in conjunction with the photographer John Maiden. We were really excited to start preserving some of these photographs that he's been taking of the city from the 1970s. We've been working with Helena Hicks, who is the pioneer for civil rights activism, and taking our professors out into Black churches, community centers, and libraries. And it's really been a great journey over the last couple of years. The thing that I'm actually proudest of that we've been able to do so far is we had our first Jazz in the Square concert in Lafayette Square in the fall of 2019. On September the 11th of 2022, please mark your calendars. We'll be back in Lafayette Square with a live concert featuring the vocalist Mamauna Yusuf. And this has been a place where we've just really been able to enjoy ourselves and to celebrate the rich culture that began in this city. A lot of us don't understand the pioneering efforts of Baltimore's Black jazz musicians in the early 1900s. And I did want to sort of conclude what I wanted to say to you about the Billie Holiday Project with a picture of our associate director, Kali Aset Amen, who has made the realization of so many of my fondest dreams possible. And we are going forward together, and we have, I think, a remarkable future in front of us. So I will turn now to our celebrated guest, Dee Watkins. Again, I'm so proud to know Dee. Dee is, I guess I'm about 10 or 15 years older than Dee, but it makes me so excited to see the next generation of writers coming forward, claiming their stories. Dee is the author of 3 books right now, and many in the works. He is especially celebrated for his memoir, The Cook-Up. And one of the things that I love about that book is that the writer does not have to go to prison to claim his story. He is able to master his environment. He challenges us with his work, with the insights that he has, and he continues to do so both locally and nationally and internationally. And I will just conclude. I will let D, as you know, the title of his book, "We Speak for Ourselves." I will let him speak for himself. But one of the things I think is most remarkable about the work that he's doing right now is that D is doing some of the hard local investigative work that is helping us understand the nature of this condition that we're in, where we are being overtaken, overrun by the police department, by the special factions of policing. And we have condemned generations of children and young adults while we have over militarized the police department. And he is doing the hard work to really bring these stories out about the gun task force and the street crimes units of Baltimore City. So I encourage you to look up his article from the Huffington Post, Only a Big World Separates Us. I'm sorry, only a mile and a big world separated us. So without any further ado, I would like to turn over our afternoon session to our good friend and our local legend, D. Watkins.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you, Dr. Jackson. Thank you for your scholarship. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate. Before I start, I want to send love to your dear friend, Donald Bentley, and his family. It's a truly tragic story, and it's just a story that we hear too much in our city. And one of the things that I want to be able to do through my work is fight to make it not be so normal, right? Our kids are just trapped in with little to no opportunity, and it's so easy to just go from being a good kid and to slipping into going the wrong way, or just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So, you know, love to the whole Bentley family, and you know, I've been there before, and I know what it's like. Billie Holiday. Billie Holiday is a magical person and a magical spirit, and her work and her music just keeps working its way back into my life. When I first started writing, every time, you know, I'm a person who I can't write to music with lyrics because it just distracts me so much, right? But the only person in the world who I can write to as far as like listening to, you know, the words is Billie Holiday. I don't know. It's like her voice just blends with the music and they just become one, and it's magical. And she's just keep coming back into my life. So I'm happy. I'm thankful for the project. I'm thankful for telling her Baltimore story. There's so many, you know, people don't even really know, or what they should know, how special Billie Holiday was to this city. And then the film just came out, and and when the film came out, the Hulu film about Billie Holiday, I was kind of, you know, I'm not going to front, I was reluctant to watch it because it was told through the lens of a police officer, and I'm like, this magical, brilliant woman, why is this the story? But then I got invited to be on this television show called Soul of a Nation, and one of the guests was actually Andra Day, who played Billie Holiday, and we were on a conference call on Clubhouse, just talking about it, talking about the show, talking about the segment, and when she stopped to talk about how she prepared for the film, it was just mind blowing to me. Like it was so mind blowing, and it made me appreciate the film, want to watch the film, appreciate the film. And I'm just inspired by her work. She lost 40 pounds to play the role. She lost, but it was between 20 and 40 pounds to play the role. She started smoking cigarettes. She doesn't smoke. She started drinking alcohol. She doesn't drink. She started using profanity in her everyday life, and she doesn't use profanity. She's like a saint. And she started being more promiscuous with her actions, and she's been celibate for like maybe 7 years or something like that. So it's, you know, the work ethic that went behind that truly inspired me. And then I'm sitting here like, how's me, just a guy from East Baltimore on a conference call with like the movie stars and stuff like that. how did I get into this position? And, you know, I think it ties into everything that I want to talk about today. Amplifying what we have in a city. When Dr. Jackson was doing the introduction, he was talking about how people don't know about Frederick Douglass as a Baltimorean, because, you know, collectively we can all do more to amplify that. We can amplify our stories, our voices, and the people who are in this city here fighting to make change. And I'm here today just to let everybody know. And, you know, I'm really, you know, I feel crazy telling this story, but my whole career is just a mistake. It's a mistake. Like, and I'm not talking about street stuff. I'm not talking about the times I almost lost my life. I'm not talking about the times I could have went to jail for 10, 15, 20, whatever years. I'm talking about my writing career was the combination of perfect mistakes. Mistake number one, I was in a hospital and I was having like a procedure done where I had to stay a couple of nights. And if you guys ever stayed in hospitals, you know, this is not like a lot of cable unless you have like really some type of special insurance. You just get you get to watch like this show called Mama's Family and and like MASH. It's not a lot of stuff going on that a young black man would be trying to really get into. No disrespect to MASH or Mama's Family. It got me through some of them nights, but I wasn't trying to hear it. This nurse walks in the room with a book stuck to her head, right? And I've never, ever seen a person so excited about reading a book. Like, it just blew my mind. She just is walking around and, you know, I can't even see her face. And I said, wow, that must be a good book. And she said, oh, you would love this book. And I said, nah, I'm not into all that. And she said, no, trust me, you know, I see how you talk, and, you know, your friends who come to visit you, they smell like weed, you know, you would love this book. And I said, first of all, my friends smell like weed because of cataracts. And, you know, she thought that was funny. And, you know, we would joke like that, but she actually left the book. And the book was The Coldest Winter Ever, right? So if I never would have been in the hospital and I never would have had that nurse, I never would have discovered that I actually love books. I read that book front to back, and I was not a reader. But that book single-handedly, Sister Soldier's book, made me read everything that Sister Soldier ever wrote. It made me look up Sister Soldier interviews and find out who inspired her, and then read what they wrote. That book took me from reading about some street stories from Jersey and New York to what Toni Morrison was writing, to what James Baldwin was doing, to On the Road and Naked Lunch, to Fyodor Dostoevsky. That book lit the fire that turned into me. So that's the first mistake. I you know, books like that with that kind of content that tell stories that young people can relate to should have been implemented in the schools a long time ago, right? So that's the first mistake. And that book actually made me excited about reading and learning more about myself and my own story and where I came from and the people that were here before me. That lit everything, right? So that's the first mistake. So now I'm redirecting my whole entire life into trying to be a writer, and I'm working hard, and I'm trying to get an agent, and I got an agent, and we're trying to get a book deal. Nobody wants to give me a book deal, and I'm struggling, and I'm working 60 odd jobs, and I'm telling people that I'm a writer, right? And people are like, yeah, what do you do? No, I'm a writer. Well, how do you make a living? I don't make a living, but I'm going to one day, right? I had to walk around with that dream because there weren't many outlets in the city for people who wanted to be writers. Like, you know, like now these kids have all these meetups and poetry nights and book clubs, and social media has made the world smaller and people are connecting. But at this time, there was nobody doing that. So I was just in this world trying to figure it out, and it wasn't really working for me. And I was submitting to so many different literary agencies before I actually found one. And then my agent tried so hard to sell my book. One publisher said, a guy from East Baltimore who still lives in East Baltimore, writing about East Baltimore, why would we sign him? Will he be alive? Will he be alive to see his book debut? So this is the kind of stuff that we have to deal with. So I started trying to publish essays, and I pitched to a couple of places, and one of the places was Galka, back when Kaise Lamont, before he blew up with the book Heavy, he was an editor there. He loved my essay, but it was some crazy stuff going on at Gawker. He ended up leaving, so it never got to run. Then I pitched it to Salon. And this is the second mistake, right? This is the second mistake. I pitched it to the culture section. No, I'm sorry, to the life section at Salon. And it was to an editor named Sarah Hepler. And the essay was about some of my friends and I in Baltimore playing spades and how we were too poor for pop culture because we would sit around the table playing cards over a bottle of cheap liquor, right? Talking about news stories that was like 4 or 5 weeks old. I had social media. I had a smartphone. So I knew, all of the, some of the latest trends. And I would break them down to them because they had flip phones that don't go on the internet. And they didn't have Twitter. And they don't got Facebook. And they not even thinking about those things. They trying to survive. And the crazy thing about it is the editor at Salon was a recovering alcoholic, but she loved to drink. She loved to drink. Like one of the highlights of her day was getting drunk with her coworkers, getting drunk with her friends, running around New York and ending up at some dive bar at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was, she loved it. Like, some people talk about they like to drink, they get a buzz. This editor, the way she drank, it was a sport, like the highlight of her day. Every time she cracked a bottle of liquor, it was like finding new money, right? So because it was so dangerous to her career, she just had to stop cold turkey. She had to join AA. She had some time clean. But the joy she got was, and she was working on a book called Blackout, which actually ended up doing really well. But at the time, she read my essay, my blind submission, and it caught her eye because it was a person who was talking about having some fun over a drink. And it blew her mind. And she said, I think this essay is so amazing. I think it's so good to the point, I don't even know if you're a real person. I got to make sure you're not a robot. Who do you know in the literary community in Baltimore? And I was like, I kind of don't really know anybody. Not thinking that at the time I was in the MFA program at University of Baltimore when I left Hopkins. And one of my teachers used to write for a newspaper in Austin, Texas. And this woman who was living in New York actually used to write for the same newspaper in Austin, Texas. So they linked up and my teacher said, oh no, he's the real deal. Like he's the real deal. I don't know why he doesn't have a book deal yet. She publishes the essay, it goes viral. And now it became easier for my agent to sell my book. So that's the second mistake. The first mistake, if I'm not sitting in a hospital, I never know I love words. The second mistake is if this woman wasn't like on nostalgia, tripping down memory lane for a story about some people, having some drinks and having a good time, then maybe my essay never would have ran, right? And that's kind of how I got here. And after I wrote that essay, I didn't really understand the power that I had, but I would learn of what that power could be over the next couple of weeks. So I wrote the essay, and essay went crazy and started on news and television for the first time, and people actually wanted to hear my opinion. Funny thing about it is I was flat broke because people don't know when you're a freelancer, the essays only pay like $100. So, and it take like 6 months to get it. So I'm flat broke, but I actually have the opportunity to go to these different places and expand my platform. And D. Watkins was everybody's, darling or whatever, right? I got, the cover of the art section and all the local newspapers and all of this stuff. And who is this guy? And it became like a cool thing. And to the point where like all of my friends from the neighborhood, they were taking the Baltimore Sun article where I had the cover, and they were like hanging it on their refrigerators, on their walls. Their moms were like laminating it and all of that. And I thought I was actually doing something. I was a person that was telling these stories from the inside out. instead of being a person from the outside looking in, because we see that too much, right? This is why we calling this thing writing Baltimore, this big outsider perspective. So I thought I was doing something. And then I realized, and that's my third mistake. I thought I was doing something and I wasn't doing nothing at all. A mistake that we make too many times, especially when you want to be a change maker, when you want to love people, when you want to build community. You know, we do something and we think it's so great, but it's really not. And let me tell you why. It was at the basketball court, both checks. Sunday mornings, we used to do this thing where the older guys would play like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and then the young boys would start to roll up around like 10:30, 11. So by the time they come to the court, we're already done. And we're just talking trash about what we would have did to them if they would have got here early, knowing they never going to get there early. And they would have cooked us. But I was finishing out my one little game, my 1.5, maybe 2 games on the court. And then I'm walking over to the grill. And I see my homie Dub. Dub's a big guy. He was maybe like the biggest guy out there. If you can, the people in Zoom land, just imagine like a Cadillac Escalade or like a Viking stove with like a cardigan on. This is how big he is, right? He's that kind of guy. And he's like, D, let me talk to you for a second. So I said, all right, man. So I walk over to the gate. He said, nah, take a walk with me. Back in the day, Dub used to be an enforcer. For those who don't know, when the hustlers in the neighborhood needed to collect and you weren't trying to pay, they would send this guy, and he's the guy who would come and grab you by your ankles and dangle all the money out your pockets. And, he's one of them guys who's just naturally big, like Schwarzenegger, without lifting weights, just like a big person. So he's bigger than me. So I'm like, all right, whatever, here I come. So we're walking down the street. I'm not a short guy. I'm like 6'2". So this guy has to be like double that. Or at least, he's like 6'2" wide. And then he's tall, and he's like 6'7". So we're walking down the street, and he's telling me, "Yo, my mom hung your article up, and she's doing her thing. I mean, she's happy that you're doing your thing, and we proud of you. And my daughter's in college now, and check this out. She wrote me a letter. He thinks in his pocket, and he passes me the letter, and I'm like, why would I want to read a letter from your daughter to you? That's kind of personal, bro. So he's like, no, read it all out. So I'm like, I'm skimming, and he's like, read it. And I'm like, yo, I'm not reading, And then it hit me. He wants me to read it because he can't, right? Well, here I go, think I'm doing something so good because this newspaper acknowledged me and my writing, and people are hanging it up on the wall, but they're not hanging up my work. They're hanging up something that somebody wrote about me. They don't even know what I'm doing or what I'm talking about because that's not a part of their reality. That is a problem. My people who I spend my free time with, who I care about the most, who I love the most, are proud of me, and they don't even know for what. They don't even know why. That was terrible. So I said, bro, I'm not going to read this letter, but I tell you what, I'll teach you how to read. So he puffed up and was like, read the letter. And like I said, he's like one of the biggest guys I know. So I was like, okay. And I started reading the letter out loud. And he basically was, it was a beautiful letter between him and his daughter about her being in school and them building their relationship and them connecting, because he went to jail for a while. And since he came home, he's been working hard at being a good dad. And then he took the letter back when I got done. And I said, yo, that invitation is always open. If you ever want that, I got you. And unfortunately, he never came back. But that changed me, right? So like I said, that was my third big mistake. That let me know that if I really wanted to make change, I need to be the person to help people who come from where I come from fall in love with books the same way that the Sister Soldier book helped me. And that just made me change everything that I've done. When I wrote the B-side, it was, some of the essays may have been, more academic. Not as academic as Dr. Jackson's writing, but for the big books, but a little more academic that I write very, 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 very very, 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 very simple. Like, I mean, like, I took that book from maybe a high school level to like a third, fourth grade reading level. I made it complex issues, but I made them very simple because I knew that it was a life and death situation for me. And don't get me wrong, like I love to read everything. But in creating the content, I realized that I needed to be able to make something that a kid could play with, because that's what we're dealing with, and that's where I put my focus at. And the most beautiful thing happened for me doing that. The essays that I was writing in anticipation for the book that came out started going viral inside of high schools. So high school teachers all over the city were saying, "Hey, could you come and talk to my students about your career?" And I'm like, well, I don't have a career yet. I don't have a career yet, but I would love to. And I started making school visits. My first one was at Patterson High School, the school that everybody in my neighborhood went to except me. I went to Dunbar, but I went to Patterson High School, and when I got there, there was this kid, and well, let me tell you, I got there writing about I wrote about a rapper named Young Moose who was incarcerated because of rap lyrics, and just to not you go down a rabbit hole with this story. I'll just say this: the cop who locked him up for his lyrics is serving 18 years in prison right now, and Moose is out making music. So we did what we had to do on that one. But I wrote about that case back in 2014, and when I got to the school, there was a kid by the classroom. And he's like, "I'm your biggest fan, man. I love your work. I love your work. This, that, and the third, man. You're the only thing I ever read." And I'm like, "But shorty, I only published like 2 essays." Like, so if you read everything I ever wrote, it probably took you about 30 minutes. And he was like, "Yeah, but it was a good 30 minutes. So I go talk to his class, and we, it was good. I mean, I got a chance to talk to him about the rapper was from the neighborhood. Writing Baltimore. I'm from the neighborhood. Writing Baltimore. Now, instead of just looking at being like this rapper, you see that you can potentially be a journalist too. So now we're changing the narrative, and we're exposing them to things that they normally wasn't really getting exposed to. And that became a real thing for them too. And one of the other teachers got word that I was in the school, and she asked the teacher who invited me, "Well, would he come talk to one more class?" And I'm like, I was unemployed. I had nothing else to do. I'll go. So the kid, he followed me. I mean, he showed me where the class was at, and he asked, like, "Can I go sit in on that one?" And she said, "Well, don't you have a math class?" And he said, "Well, there's been a substitute in there for like 4 months. I feel like I'll get more from hanging with Mr. Watkins." So the teacher said, "Yeah." And he took me up to the next class, and I did the same thing. And then the kid is like, "Yo, can you follow me on Instagram?" And I'm like, "Yeah, shorty, I'll follow you. Can we take a picture? I'm trying to get my followers up." I say, "Yeah, shorty, I got you." So we took a picture, and that was my first school visit. And then that first school visit turned into many, 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 many school visits. And the crazy thing about it is the school board heard what I was doing, and they invited me down, and they said, "Look, we're gonna work with you. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. We're gonna support you and get behind you. It's gonna be a beautiful thing." And then the guy who had said all this to me ended up leaving, and then that just went away. And I didn't think about it because by this time, I actually had my books out, and I got a chance to work in television, and I got a chance to do some other things, and I got the job at University of Baltimore, so now I'm working. I got health insurance. I can get my teeth fixed, and all of these things you don't think about when you don't have insurance. And but at the same time, I was still making my school visits, and I was still happy to be going inside of all of these different schools and working with these kids. And now it's becoming a thing. Well, yeah, I don't got to go to the streets. I don't got to do this. I don't got to do that. I can try to be a professor. I can try to be an author. I can try to be a professional. I want to tell my story too. That's something that memoir does for a lot of young people, is it gets them excited about telling their stories too. So I get another phone call from a teacher, and he's like, hey man, I'm having this meeting with the school board. We're going to put your books on curriculum and every student is going to read them because they like them so much and it's amazing. And, you know, I'm thinking like, wow, that is amazing. Like I couldn't believe it. And, you know, I've been told similar things like that before and it didn't really happen. But now I have a more high profile and the teachers, the administrators don't know me. Many of the principals didn't know me, but the teachers knew me. The teachers knew me because I made my rounds in schools and I took writing workshops and I did giveaways. And when I say giveaways, I don't mean just books. I mean like I'll have like downtown locker room come to a school and give like 100 kids gift cards so they can buy like sneakers and stuff like that. So when the big brands or companies like that who make a lot of money off our communities, they want me to do stuff. To come to the store or to say something or to be a part of some campaign, I say, well, I'll do it, but you got to look out for these kids. So I was able to do stuff like that, and I was making my rounds, and it was kind of good. It was a good thing. And the teacher gives me a phone call one night, and I'm in my office working late on the third book, and the teacher calls me up, and he's in tears. This guy was in tears. He was like, hey man, they're going to deny your books because, one of them has a lot of profanity, so it's not going to be able to go. And I said, well, what are you telling me? Students at Baltimore City Public Schools never heard profanity? And he was heartbroken. And then I was like, whatever, man, forget about it. But then I got upset. I went back and I read my book and I'm like, yo, they use it. The kids like it. It's telling stories that's relevant. It's not, it's telling them, it's talking about the power of where you come from, but then it's also talking about the power of direct service. You know what I'm saying? Like it's talking about things that we really need in our cities, in our streets, in our community. How could they deny me because of profanity? That's crazy to me. And I went over a friend's house and we had a couple of drinks and I fussed about it for probably about 5 hours because I just thought it was such a empty decision. And then I said, oh man, I got to go to work the next day. And it's like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. So I jump in my car and I start driving down the street. I was leaving Douglas Housing Projects and I was headed down to that gas station on Fayette Street. And I had no gas in the tank. So I pull up to the gas station and I run to the window and I tell the guy, whatever, give me cigarette. I smoked cigarettes at the time. Give me some cigarettes. Put like $40 in the tank. And when I get back to my car, a kid pops out like, hey, what's up? What you doing here? And I'm, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, that woke me up. I was a little tired, but that woke me up. So I said, what? And then he looks at me and he said, you remember me? And I said, nah. He said, you came to my school. I said, I go to a lot of schools, right? So he said, what you doing out here? And I was like, I'm getting gas, shorty. And as I'm talking to him, I'm looking at him, and I can see that his hoodie was kind of beat up. I could see his shoes was kind of messed up, busting at the seams. I said, man, this kid might not be doing too good. So I said, yo, you need something? And he was like, nah, I'm down bad right now. And as I'm looking at him and talking to him, I can see his eyes moving from me to behind me. And I see him wave somebody off. And I turn around, and there's a couple of other kids that's lingering, at the other end of the gas station. And I said, okay, I see what's up, right? So I said, hold this. And I give him the pump. I walk back over to the window. And I tell the dude, I go to the ATM and I take out like $60 or something like that. And I came back and then I reached out for a handshake. I gave him to him and I held his hand. I said, shorty, I want you to know that people who rob, they don't last that long. And he was like, no, I know. And I just want to tell you, I'm happy you did everything you said you was going to do. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. But be safe out here, have a good one. And then I put the cat on the car and I pulled off and I went home, right? And in my mind, I said, wow, man, that shorty just stopped me they was going to rob me, right? And I get home. When I get home, I lay down and I wake right back up and said, you know what? That was the kid from my first school visit. It was the kid from Patterson High School years ago. And because I let him roll with me and we had that conversation and that exchange, that meant something to him. And he just potentially saved my life. And I never forgot that. And I never got mad at the school system ever again. for not using my books the way I thought they should use my books. Never had any more complaints, and just told myself I was going to double down and try my best to support and commit to as many young writers as I can in the city, and go to any and every classroom that invites me. And if the school system likes it, it's cool. If they don't, then that's cool too. And then somebody from the school system reads my third book, and they make it one book, one Baltimore, and then they get like 13,000 copies, and they gave them to every 7th and 8th grader. And I've spent the whole pandemic doing virtual visits and workshops in schools, and it's been part of like one of the most beautiful experiences in my life, and one of my biggest honors, because so many young people said that of all of the things they've been through over this crazy year, my visit is something that was special to them, and that they're going to remember, and that reading is something that they can fall in love with, and something that is cool, and they're happy that we were able to do it. And that's the blessing to me. And I feel like my job here, as a writer, but also as a student of Dr. Jackson and his work, as a student of Billie Holiday and her legacy, as a student of Frederick Douglass and his legacy. My job is to do my part to amplify those voices, to find those people in Baltimore who love Baltimore and who care about Baltimore, and help them get on the right path to telling stories about Baltimore. There's so many outsiders sucking away at us, our culture, our ideas on the internet, trying to interpret our city while they live in Florida or LA or something, not even thinking enough about us to actually live in the city. And they're clogging up space, but we're going to work hard to make sure we amplify these local voices. And anything I can do in my power from here on out, like, you know, from back then, I'm going to continue to do. And that's my job. That's my journey. That's what I'm here for. Thank you.
Wow. Very, very powerful, man. I really, really appreciate that. I mean, everything that you laid out is so rich. We've got, about 15 minutes. Maybe we could have a little conversation. Then we'd like to bring in our audience with the chat. I don't, again, it might seem a little bit informal. Everybody who is listening to the talk today should know that Dee and I have had a chance for formal conversations and also informal conversations. We've been able to speak both in elevated tones. We've also been able to speak in the vernacular. So we're going to, keep combining and, improvising and being rich in the tradition. But, one thing someone very close to me once said, boy, you could really be a great writer or a great intellectual if you just didn't have all these pop culture references in your mind. Like, the lyrics to all these songs from the 1970s, you think in rap lyrics or that kind of thing. And of course, I'm a generation where, my homeboy David Blow and I, we were the rhythm rap writers. And when Run DMC came out, it was like, it transformed us. We were like, oh, now I know what I want to do with the rest of my life, kind of thing. But just in terms of the value and the validity of lyricism and the way that storytelling is so valuable in the lyrical work of so many of the contemporary poets. And you, of course, said you're from Dunbar, so you are the poet. But I do. I mean, again, like I say, I mean, don't take it the wrong way. But I'm always curious. The lyricist, the rap lyricist, who are the most vital people for you? And you mentioned, because you open that question when you say Sister Soldier is the narrative writer who opened the door for me. But I'm just curious, were you drawn to any of the power of the lyrical storytelling of, sort of the people that were on the airwaves?
Absolutely. I say this all the time. My favorite writer is Toni Morrison. My favorite living writer is Jessamine Ward, but the person who's the most influential and important to my career is the rapper Nas. Nas took the stories that existed in my neighborhood that I stayed up all night listening to, sitting on blocks as a little kid, and he made it into art that I can listen to and vibe with and consume. So, I love Jimmy B, man, but Jimmy B, Nas has been more important to my career, just by the master storyteller he is, his imagination, his creativity has just been transformative for me.
Wow. And so it's, you're introduced to the Illmatic, and then you go on from there. Any particular albums that were speaking with special significance to the nature of your experience?
Oh, so it was, for me, it was New York State of Mind and One Love. One Love is One Love is, yes. It's a remake. It's a remake, but Nas's One Love is letters to his friends locked up. Right. And that has been writing letters. Right now, my best friend Taylor Robinson is doing 27 years for nonviolent crimes. Nonviolent crimes. I think it's important to say that. And he's been gone for 14 years, but even before Tavon, writing letters to people in prison has been a part of my life. It's been so normal for me, because I know that when you're behind that wall, one of the few things that help you make it through that experience is people on the outside not forgetting about you, putting a couple dollars on your books, but most importantly, writing you, letting you know what's happening and what's going on. And he took that and he made it art. And then New York State of Mind just reminded me of just running up and down Ashland Avenue. Like it reminded me of in front of the 125 building in Lafayette. The way he just break it down is just it was sick. It was next level, and I fell in love with that. But it's crazy that you and your friend, you guys had the innovation and the love to go deeper into music. I never had the confidence to actually try, and I don't think people want an album from me now.
I don't think they wanted an album from us then. But maybe
we should do one now. Then maybe we should make one now.
The thing was, I always was really wanted to be a DJ, but just couldn't get past that threshold of the purchase price for the equipment. Always collecting records, and music was such a big part of our life in the neighborhood. And then, of course, we really, really loved the We Rock crew. And it was just sort of like, 4 p.m. WWIN, and, Terry T would be on the Wheels of Steel. And, you just wanted to hear that because that was the authentic, original culture, that was coming out from the city. And, we always loved the city. I'm one of the people who thinks that, Frank Ski took it down. But that's another conversation for another day. You mentioned also Toni Morrison and Jessamine Ward, and Sister Jessamine Ward was at Hopkins about 2 years ago. A really, really beautiful spirit, and somebody who takes so seriously the recovery of Black life, and has moved our point of view and our perspective to Mississippi, and making sure that we remember that, it's not only an urban experience. Would you say a little bit more about either one of those writers and, sort of what they've meant to you, maybe things that you might borrow from them or different techniques that you like to use?
I think for Jasmine, the way that she can just slow down a scene, right? I think fast, I talk fast, I tell stories fast, I do everything fast, and sometimes I don't give personally. And I can't really say I take it from her, but I am learning. I'm definitely learning how to be in the moment more. I think The Men We Reaped was one of the most beautiful books written on Black male life in a time where it's not even popular. Like it's not even popular to write like that, and she did it in a way that made people love us in a different way. The same thing with Salvage the Bones. Jasmine is so good. She's so good of a storyteller that she has people sympathizing and falling in love with people who fight dogs. You know, like that's how good she is. I don't even know if you can take that because that's a gift. That's a gift from God. And you know, her essay that she wrote about her husband who just passed, which is extremely sad, from COVID, was yeah, her husband just passed from COVID a couple of months ago, and she wrote a big piece about it, an article, and you know, and again, like how she handles Black life and how she's delicate with perspective and how she's so thoughtful is something that's just magical to me. And that heir apparent to to Toni Morrison, to me. And then we can go out there on Toni Morrison. That's good. That's gonna be 4 Zoom calls.
Sure, of course. You know, Song of Solomon is always speaking, you know, with such intensity to me. You say this thing about the balance between the person who is energetic in terms of their level of engagement, but then we also know that there's a contest with the discipline of writing. And could you talk a little bit about how you manage that, and maybe again some of the more practical things that you do to discipline yourself and your writing practice?
So for me, my discipline comes from my ability to disconnect. And any and everything that I would do when I'm not writing turns into a reward. It sounds kind of crazy, but like, you know, when I'm locked in on a project, right? Like I just finished writing Carmelo Anthony's memoir, and the publishing company never really gave me, I'm not gonna say they didn't give me, but we didn't have hard deadlines. The NBA players were in the bubble. Melo and I didn't really get a chance to connect in person because of COVID. A lot of people who I wanted to interview from the book wasn't really able to come around because of not come around, but the Zoom thing doesn't work for everybody. You know, it doesn't work for everybody. It can be like a thing. So I'm writing and researching and writing and chilling, and then one day they're like, "Oh, we need that book in like a month." And I'm like, "Oh." So, you know, me and Mello got on the phone every day. We went to war every day. And when I talk about discipline, getting myself a sandwich became a reward. Looking at my Instagram became a reward. Taking a nap or watching one TV show became a reward. Everything else was all work. So by doing that, I had enough rewards to be able to keep up with, I can't remember the show I was watching. I can't remember the show I was watching last month, but we were watching the show. But with my rewards, I was able to keep up with, it wasn't snowfall. It was like little fires everywhere or something like that. But I was able to watch the show, but at the same time, I was able to finish my work. And I think they wanted maybe like 60 to 70,000 words, and I got it to them in that time period. So I was proud of that.
My only question is, how many times does Myrtle Avenue come up?
Oh, a lot, a whole lot. 1122 Myrtle Avenue, and he played for Mount Royal. When he talked about Coach Corbett a lot.
Oh my gosh, Darrell Corbett was his coach?
Yeah, and Coach Corbett runs Team Mello today. So he's still down with Mello. Coach Corbett was actually the most important coach in his young adult life. He credits Corbett with everything.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
I didn't know. Darrell Corbett from Park Avenue.
Yeah.
He was in my graduating class of '66.
Yeah, that's his coach. That's his guy, Corbett. Coach Corbett.
Small world. So look, I'm gonna move over. We got a bunch of questions. I want to see if we can get through many of them. They're from all over the place. Some about writing, a lot of them about the city. We're really excited to talk about the city. We're so happy to have you here with us.
Let's do it.
Somebody has asked, I won't say the people's names, just for privacy. How do we better support? Here's one you get to put on your another hat. How do we better support struggling parents raising children in communities challenged with everything from interpersonal violence to substandard housing?
At the end of the day, thank you for that question. And I get hit with that question a lot, and I always feel like guilty, or not worthy of being a person to tell another person what they can do to make a difference. What I will say is that, from my experience, change hasn't happened on a large scales. Like, I don't have the money and the capacity to go build a rec center and a hospital and a jobs program, but I can help you with your resume. I can loan you a couple of dollars to make sure you can make it through the week. I can show you how to tie it. I'm not the best at tying tie, but we can get on YouTube and knock it out together. I can help you do them simple things that you need to make it by, with the hopes of you getting where you need to go and then doing that for the next person. But it's a personal thing. What can you handle? What can you do? What do you have the ability to do? And then how do you make it happen? Someone asked me this question. I was at like Harvard or Columbia or something like that. And I'm like, yo, how'd you get into Harvard? Like, you wanted to get into this school, and you figured out how to get in here. Whether you had to write a crazy letter or do some community service or study for some type of wild test, you did what you had to do to get into this school. And that's not a knock on the question, but if we really want to see a difference, as much as we want that house, as much as we want that vacation, as much as we want that car, is as hard as we gotta want to, be able to make a difference. And we have to understand that when you try to make a difference, it's not about trying to, change the hearts and lives of thousands of people, but it's a small thing. You can start off with a small group of people, because one thing that the people who you mentioned, as far as trying to support, one thing that they all have in common is that they don't have no connections.
That's right.
Growing up poor, I had no connections. I didn't know anybody at good schools. I didn't know anybody that went to college who would hang out with me. I didn't know anybody. Nobody was coming to my school to, tell me how to, get a resume and all that stuff. Like, I had no connections, no uncle running an auto shop, nothing. So poor people, the people who lack support, need connections. So if you can be a connection, and then whatever that looks like becomes like a personal thing.
Social facilitation is key. Expanding that social network. When Donald was murdered, I wanted to have a citywide peace conference, and I met a guy, decades later, Brother Stokey Kennedy, and I was just so proud of him because he had a peace conference, an East-West peace conference, and you talked about the connection that's made through the what is the name of the group? It's Public Enemy, and then Security to First World. And, they were also in conjunction with like KRS-One and his group to stop the violence movement from the 1980s. But at that time, I got to know Harry Allen a little bit through some of my writing. And it was just sort of like, how can you get beyond, just sort of this very, very narrow slice of the world that you inhabit, so that you can, again, begin to have this impact. You said earlier, the power of direct service. I thought that was really intense, man. And also, germane to the question. And then, of course, the anecdote about putting, $60 in the hands of a young person, and what we need to do to be responsible stewards, or, big brothers and uncles and aunts and big sisters to the young people who need us so desperately, and, the sacrifice that's required. The next question was, would you share your feelings about the impact of the Chauvin verdict and policing?
Yeah, I wrote about it. And what I wrote was saying that, the idea of justice is what that family wants. And if that family wants that guilty verdict, and they want him to serve time in prison, then that family has received justice. And what I want people to not really get mixed up, in my opinion, is Chauvin's verdict doesn't mean that America is fixed. America was not on trial. Derek Chauvin was on trial. He went to jail. And we see it rings true when they killed Dante Wright a couple miles away. And then the young lady, Makia, who just got shot in Columbus, Ohio, right? These people know you can go to jail for shooting black people, but at the same time, you know, they still do it. So I think Chauvin's verdict almost came with that Obama effect, with people walking around saying, well, you got a black president, racism is over. No, racism turned up. And we see that with the next clown that was in office, and then the Capitol building and all of that stuff. Like we see what happened, right? We see what can happen. So I'm happy that his family is happy. I'm happy that his family is happy, but I'm also sad because there's really my idea of justice is him being alive. He deserved to live. He didn't deserve to die. And I'm sure his family will probably tell you no amount of money or, you know, this guy sitting in jail for 1,000 years is going to bring him back. But I just don't want us to think that America's fixed now, because it's not.
Would you talk about the new book? Tell us what it's about and where we can get it.
So I'm working on a couple of books. The Carmelo Anthony book is just a memoir about him moving to Baltimore when he was 8 years old, from Red Hook, New York, and spending his formative years playing basketball here. But what a lot of the difference between his book and a lot of stories, and the reason why I took the project, is people don't really understand that a lot of these athletes, they just get the luxury of focusing on basketball. You know, once they get identified as being talented as kids, they get to focus on basketball their whole life. Carmelo was identified as being talented as a kid, but he had to always put survival first. He had to make it to the gym. He had to make it to these leagues and tournaments. And it's a crazy, wild, turbulent story. And I think people need to understand that we have superstar athletes like Mark Culture was shot, and he was a top-ranking basketball player. John Crowder was about 6'8", hit at the Kansas. I think he signed with them as a sophomore, on pace to be a superstar. He was murdered in the streets of Baltimore. So it's like being an athlete can't save you here. And his book talks about what he had to overcome, but at the same time, that resiliency and why that impacts the activism and the work he does today. Another book I'm working on is about masculinity and how I was sold, and like many young boys, was sold all of these false, dated, bad ideas of what a man is, how a man should act, how a man should carry himself, and how toxic and dangerous that mentality is. How that mentality put me and a whole lot of people I know in a lot of bad situations sometimes, definitely. So I wanted to get a chance to talk about that, and why we have to, you know, as I'm on my journey into fatherhood, why I had to when I had to unlearn, and what I had to how I had to be deprogrammed and then reprogrammed with the right information needed, so that I'm doing my part to try to make the world a better place for for all children, not just my own.
What advice would you give teachers who want to keep students engaged in learning in urban schools?
Take an interest in the music they like. That's the key. At the end of the day, if you can talk intelligently about the music they like, you got them. You got them. And I only say that because I'm a modest guy. I don't like to brag, but let me just say this. I might be one of the best substitute teachers of all time. You know, nobody listens to substitutes. Like, another teacher walk in, you take a day off, right? So I used to be a long-term substitute at Friendship Academy, and people would ask me, well, how are you getting these students to listen and focus and all of that? And when I first got there, I was thinking that they were going to be cool with me because I'm from the neighborhood. A lot of kids from East Baltimore, from what we call down the hill, was attended this school called, not Friendship Academy on Northern Parkway, but it's another Friendship Academy that was in Canton, and it used to be Canton Middle School. So when I got there, I'm looking at these kids' faces, and I'm like, I know your father, I know your mom, I know y'all, so And then I actually knew some of the kids because they would come to the basketball court and stuff like that. So I'm hanging around with the kids and I'm thinking they're going to listen. And I'm trying to tell them about Jay-Z. And they're like, Jay-Z? You mean Beyonce's husband? He used to make music. He makes music. I'm like, yo, I'm really a dinosaur to these kids. I'm like a house phone. So I started asking the kids who they listen to, right? And this is all getting to how, I became effective in their school. And at the time, Chicago drill music was like the most popular music to these Baltimore kids. Like Chicago drill is like Lil Durk. It was like Fredo. It was like L.A. Capone, Rondo #9, G Herbo, but he was Lil Herb, Lil Bitty. And I sat there and I went down the YouTube rabbit hole and I watched all the videos, the whole, like these kids didn't even allow it. Chief Keef. So Chief Keef was considered mainstream.
He's not drill. Gotcha.
He's drill. No, Chief Keef is drill, but Chief Keef was the one who like signed that deal and blew up. And all of these people were like the underground people. Oh, so you can't even, a lot of these artists never had albums. They just only had YouTube. So I had to learn that. And then when I incorporated that in my conversation, in the lesson, into writing prompts, I became the guy.
I hate to say it, man, but G Herbo got something to say.
I became the guy when I did that.
Wow. Okay. So would you say something more about the One Book Project and the impact that you hope that it has on the students?
So I was so fortunate and so blessed because this is maybe like the 4th year that they did the project. And I was the first writer from Baltimore to receive the One Book Baltimore award. And it was special to me because the books that they choose, I know they chose Jason Reynolds, who's a brother out of DC before me, and then Nick Stone, a sister out of Atlanta, Georgia. And the one thing about all of our books is that they speak to a special experience that young kids in Baltimore City understand. So these kids are in the 7th grade and the 8th grade getting relatable content. Relatable content is non-intimidating. Normally, young Black kids don't get a chance to see themselves in books. This explosion of Black children's books and this whole genre is relatively new. When I was a kid, back in the Stone Ages, all we got was Mark Twain on top of Mark Twain, and here goes some more Mark Twain. So we didn't even see what we looked like in the book. Little Black girls didn't see, a princess that has a nose like her or hair like her. So their idea of beauty was already being picked with before they even got a chance to understand what beauty actually is, right? So now these kids are getting content that speaks directly to them, and they can relate to the content, and relating to that content again makes it non-intimidating and makes reading something that's accessible and exciting for them. And this year has actually been the most successful One Book Baltimore, according to the Pratt and the school system and T. Rowe Price and the partners. And being as though it is successful, I know that it'll create opportunity for another Baltimore author to win the award as well. And that's a blessing too. That's kind of what we fight for. And I think it had a tremendous impact. And I'm only saying that because I've spent a lot of time talking to kids who actually connected with the book and the content, and we had a good time, man. It's crazy. I made so many school visits this year because, again, they buy between like 12 and 13,000 copies of the book, and they give them to the students to keep. And all of the school visits were good, except for one teacher who like indirectly told me, this is funny. He kind of told me that he didn't want to teach my book. He likes teaching of Mice and Men. but he did it because he had to do it, and that's what it is. And he said it like in a snarky way, and I was just like, hey man, more power to you, man. I think that you can do both, and it's all good. And the funny thing about it, and I didn't say this in the meeting, but this is just the kind of stuff you deal with. The funny thing about it is the visits that I did were not mandatory. You did not have to sign up for it. Right. So you basically signed up for a visit just so you could tell me that, but it was all good. It was all good.
Can I ask you just to follow up? So if you open the door with the work that seems to bring in and invite the younger reader, how do you get them to climb the steps to more challenging work, to keep expanding the vision and encouraging further interest?
So I would say that, and I'm not a scientist. I didn't do a big study on this, but I only look at my whole guide. I shouldn't say I only look at, but my whole guide to this has been my experience. The parallels between, I started off with the Sister Soldier book. That Sister Soldier book sent me off into a whole lot of different places in a lot of different directions. And in conversations with creating this relatable content, this accessible content, teachers have been trying to implement and do the same thing. Some teachers taught some of my earlier essays with the narrative and life of Frederick Douglass, right? His time in Baltimore during that time, and in my time in Baltimore. Now, mind you, I'm not as smart and cool as Frederick Douglass. He has way better hair, obviously, but two Baltimore stories, and they put them right next to each other. So, do I think it'll work for everybody? Absolutely not. Do I also know that some students just love reading and they're going to gravitate towards it? They're going to look at my book and they're going to say, yeah, I don't want to read that. I want to read fantasy. You know what I'm saying? Or I don't want to read that. I want to read, I want to get into sci-fi or something with like spaceships and ninjas or something like that. And that's love too. But I'm talking about readers who never even knew that they would like those types of books, starting somewhere and using the books, some of the stuff that I write as like a springboard to lead to more complex different types of literature. And like I said, it's not a 100 proof system. Nothing is, but I think it worked for me, and I think it worked for a lot of educators in the city.
Someone asked a really specific question about Mosby's recent decriminalization initiatives, and do you think they'll have a lasting effect in Baltimore?
I would like to hope so. I think that we need to just take it a step further and just reimagine justice. We got to reimagine justice and what that looks like, because what we have been doing, as a city, as a system, as a country, it's just not working. One thing that America does better than everybody else is lock people up, and we see the long-term effects. It just doesn't work. I think they need to decriminalize even more things, and I think anything that's gonna keep people out of jail is a step in the right direction.
Has fatherhood changed? You touched on this, and there are two questions that sort of overlap with some other things that we talked about. Has fatherhood changed your ideas about masculinity or your writing?
My ideas about masculinity, absolutely. I'm way more delicate. Like, my patience is like X-Men level. Like, what's my guy, Professor X? I'm like, I need to go to his school because my patience is, my superpower now. And it was something that I struggled with my whole life. Until I became a dad. But I think I think it changed me a lot. And my writing, I don't know, that it remains to be seen, because I've been on a heavy writing diet since my daughter was born. She was born January 15th. Since then, I finished 2 books, a whole television show episode, ad campaign for Devin Ellis, Under Armour sneaker, a couple of, at least a dozen Salon essays and interviews, Like I've put up over 200,000 words since she's been born. So I don't know. We're gonna have to see what the new material look like.
That's tremendous. Apparently, she's not slowing you down.
No, she goes to bed around 8 o'clock every night. She's the best baby I ever seen in my life. She takes her naps. She eats her food. She does her letters. She's like the best little kid I ever seen. She's such a good kid that I'm scared to have another one. That's how good she is. I'm scared to have another baby because she's already putting pressure on me and her mom on how great she is. But she's only that great because of her mom.
Yeah, that's a model that will be unsurpassed by us, pretty much, you can guarantee. And as we sort of close out, man, is there anything else in the reflections that we could do relative to support of the city school system, or different challenges that the educators face that are different from one generation to the other, and ways that we can make amends? You mentioned the music.
The school system is they're open for support. These schools, the neighborhoods, the principals, they're open for support, and these, more than anything, these young kids need connections. I was just reading Wes Moore's book, 5 Days, and he referenced a study that has been done by a number of organizations that basically says that Baltimore City is the worst place for a young black man to grow up in America. It's the worst place. I'm going to say that one more time. The worst place for a young black man to grow up in America is Baltimore City. So these kids need connections. They need connections to trades, connections to jobs. They deserve the opportunity to be able to dream towards something. And that's better than nothing at all.
D, we are so pleased to have you get us underway. I think that Donald would be so glad to know you and to know that you were speaking on his behalf. Thank you very much, and we look forward to ongoing conversations as we do our work in community together for the improvement and the benefit of what is really a great and a historic city and community.
Thank you, man. I hope to see you soon.
Looking forward to it.
For sure.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us. And please look for the lecture again next year. And again, September the 11th, 2021, we'll be at Lafayette Square at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, the Saturday after Labor Day. And we will have a magnificent jazz concert, free and open to the public. Please come out.